Hi there. My name is Madison McElwain, the co-host and co-founder of the Room podcast. As the world around us continues to change, it's important that we continue to open the door in new ways. I'm super excited for this segment and expect a few of them over the weeks that complement a lot of the themes that we're discussing on our longer form, The Room podcast stories. I can't wait for you to hear more. Let's open the door. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us in the room today.
Thank you for having me, Madison.
We're so happy that you're here. We're going to dive into the story of Good Word and how you're reimagining networking in the 21st century. But before we do that, we'd love to start with the beginning for you. Where did you grow up and how has that shaped your view of the world?
I grew up in central New Jersey with a view of the skyline of New York City in the background, always knowing that is where I wanted to be.
So Carrie Bradshaw.
So here we are. One thing that it taught me growing up, my parents were both lawyers. Funny enough, my husband's parents are also both lawyers.
There you go.
And, 30, 40 years ago, it was about those hard skills. But now it feels like we're living in a very different era where even in growing up to now, learning that it was less about what you read in a book or like what you studied and memorized and more about who was sitting next to you and the relationships that you made along the way.
I love that. Well, in that vein of early identity, did you always think you were going to become a founder?
I thought I was going to be a lawyer for a very long
Really?
time. I took the LSAT and then never applied to law school.
Oh my gosh.
Which I think most children of lawyers either like do it or run very, very far away from it. And I ended up running away.
Yeah.
And so I ended up at Brown undergrad, spent my first couple of years in consulting at Bain, which was an amazing way of just learning the business world. And then I took a crazy leap and joined Lola as the third person when it was pre-seed stage. People thought I was a bit crazy for joining a tampon startup coming from Bain. But I've totally fell in love with startup world and haven't looked back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it's always the things that draw you in and you think, I don't know why no one else is doing this, but I have this instinct that end up being the most wild rides and so impactful in our careers. Bain in and of itself is a bit of like a networking community. You ultimately also went to Chief, I believe, after Lola and joined 200 members and scaled it to 20,000. For those who don't know about Chief, could you tell us a little bit more about that time and how it shaped your view of networking and community?
Absolutely. Chief is a network for executive women, and really it is a community of executives who come together and support each other with opportunities, with referrals, putting in a good word. And I was fortunate enough to join Chief as a founding employee when we were 200 members in Tribeca, single clubhouse, and really feel the magic, right? The magic of a room of women who show up to help each other get further in their careers. And I was there for almost 5 years. We scaled it across the US. We grew to 20,000 members. And it was both magical and it's where I first had that aha moment of it's really hard to scale connections and relationships. And so there was this feeling of like the more perfect person is probably part of this community, but who is she and how do I find her? And meanwhile, Chief was one part of a woman's network, but I mean, these were executives like CMO of Walmart was a member, and it's like she's got an enormous network from all parts of her career. How do we help someone bring that together and really activate it in a purposeful way? So I'm very grateful to Chief for the insights of and seeing the magic at work, but also that problem, experiencing that problem firsthand of, okay, communities bring us together, but they're hard to scale. And so is there a product solution or a digital solution that can fill that void?
Well, we're going to step into that lens shortly. I loved your point about the magic that occurred in the Chief rooms that you were curating these spaces for. Doing a bit of community building with my podcast, myself, my co-host and I are both women. So our rooms skew female, like maybe they're 50-50, maybe they're 60-40 on occasion. And in tech, that's so rare. The people always leave our events, not to humble brag, but be like, oh, that was a great vibe.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, I don't think we did much other than just have like a gender parity room.
It is sad and true that is the bar of unique in tech. I'm very fortunate that about 80% of our cap table are women.
Whoa.
It was partially the power of my network, right? Yeah. Leaving Chief. It was also, I think, something that resonated with women who were like, a relationship is more than we mutually opt in to LinkedIn connections. It is, hey, your kid is going to college next year. Like, I want to remember that and follow up with you and say, like, how was the college drop off? It is, kids' names, pets' names. It is that personal relationship of how did we meet? Who introduced us? What do we have in common? The mission and the vision we had really did resonate. But I love that you are bringing gender parity to the tech ecosystem.
Yeah, we try every day. Well, that resonates deeply. And I'm thinking about your childhood self looking across the skyline. How would you explain to her what Good Word does today?
I would ask her, hey, remember that great friend you had in kindergarten? Her name was Martha. What happened to Martha?
Where's Martha?
Have you had a play date recently? You're in second grade now. Like, maybe you're not in the same class. I would say, have you asked your parents to schedule a play date? You used to be on the same soccer team. And then I would say, well, how do you remember these people who once you were kind of thrown together in the same classroom or the same sports team, and now you're just not seeing each other every day? But that's not because you didn't love this person and find them to be a wonderful friend. What is the way that you stay in touch, remember, hear about maybe something big that happened in her life? And, what if you had something that could kind of tap you or your mom on the shoulder and remind her, like, hey, it's really time to have another play date with your friend Martha?
It sounds like Good Word is a good friend. So tell me a little bit more about the core audience then for Good Word. You're, of course, a tech company. You've been backed by VC investors. I imagine as super networkers, they're a core buyer or user, but you're in beta. So how are you thinking about that growing audience base?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're learning every day from our audience. We have over 300 people who are part of our beta group. We've got a wait list of over 10,000.
Oh my gosh.
And so we really...
I am on it, by the way, so.
Okay, I think we know someone.
We can make something work. Okay, great.
We can make it happen. But we're learning from people of how they're using Good Word. And that's kind of the magic as a founder. It's like I've had this nugget of an idea in my head for so long, and then you start to put it on paper, and then you start to put it into Figma, and then you start to put it in an app, and then you give it to someone, and then like that's where you get to see it really come to life. So one of my favorite stories, we have a user named Lauren who, probably like yourself, she has a lot of followers. And in her case, she's a keynote speaker, and
Cool.
So her challenge was, I have a lot of people who know me, but I don't know who they are because they're in her audience.
Right.
And so one thing she's been using Good Word for is we've got on the home screen kind of this recommendation stack. And the idea is we take everything we know about you, your network, your goals, and we run all of that through the AI. Like, we use LLMs to really try to surface the people where it's sort of like the right person at the right time can create opportunities.
Yeah.
And so for Lauren, she's been like, oh yeah, there's sometimes people where it's like, I totally forgot about that person. I didn't know they've moved into fractional work for startups. I also have, we should totally chat. Or, oh, I didn't even know that person was in my network because we've never met in person. But now that I'm seeing them surface, and Good Word articulates the why, which I think is really important. Like, why spend the time? Because the time is so precious. Why make the effort to connect with this person? It's because it could be mutually beneficial.
Yeah. And today, in kind of a world of slop, if you will, having like really high quality introductions and high quality whys is so valuable. You can't put a price on it.
No, and it's why we've continued to center the human in our product. We have not wanted to outsource the relationship building to the robot, because the reality is human trust occurs between humans, and it is like the social capital that is so important to relationships, right? So now that we're spending time together, say you send me an email and you're like, hey, Caroline, would you chat with my friend? Of course. The answer is of course. But if, a robot said, hey, Caroline, would you chat with my friend, the same person, I probably would ignore it because I have hundreds of emails. And it's not because I don't want to chat with them. It's just that sort of you're using your your trust to make that introduction, and I trust you and you trust her, and so it's kind of this transitive property.
Yeah, people do really trust people, which kind of goes without saying, but noticing it with our own platform with the podcast, like, yeah, the podcast is doing fine. It has followers, but Claudia and myself, my co-host and I's accounts actually, or would have gained the followers an exponential more volume than our actual The Room podcast LinkedIn page.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's been trends lately on LinkedIn, people saying like, oh, based on you're a person, not a company, or unfortunately, if you're a man, not a woman, like certain algorithmic response. But it's like, okay, the AI is just an algorithm. Like it's just doing what it thinks we want. But that's why I think if you outsource too much to the machine, that's where, that realness gets lost.
And people want to know people. There's a lot of people in New York. You guys are building in New York. We're recording this year.
We are.
How did you guys think about New York as the hub for a good word? And how do you think about building like both like local and global networks?
I mean, New York has always been home to me since I was like staring at the skyline. But I think New York is an amazing place to build because it is so diverse, right? We're not building solely for one industry. We are an AI native tech company, but the people who want to use Goodword, I mean, we've heard everything from lawyers who are like, all of a sudden I made partner and I'm supposed to do BD and I haven't built my network that way. I'm not comfortable networking, right? Or people in finance, private wealth managers, like they're also really interested because it's all about relationships over many, many years, client work. So I think Goodword is a product that would be great for any professional who's relationship minded. And I think there's that diversity in New York, unlike maybe on the West Coast, it's a little more focused.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're excited to be here. We've been really intentional about building community. Just this morning, we hosted a breakfast event releasing our State of Human Connections report. Cool. We love bringing people together, and with our product, we're trying to learn how to best kind of help people bridge that in-person to digital world. Like, how do you keep a relationship going after, you go home? Like, how do you stay connected? And how many times you need to see someone in person or interact with to like turn that connection into a real relationship?
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious just to take a step back and think about an audience member who might be listening and thinking about how they can network better until they get off the Goodword beta, of course. Like, what are your takes, if you will, hot, cold, on how to be an amazing networker in 2026?
Yeah. Well, I actually think the first thing is don't think about it as networking.
Okay, yeah, good reframe. I love that.
I mean, right? Because if I sent you a cold LinkedIn DM, your inbox is probably flooded.
Yeah.
And if you have 200 unread text messages, I cannot imagine what other channels look like. And so again, how is it about relationship building? So first of all, is there someone where we have a mutual relationship, where there's that transitive trust where you could get a warm intro? Second, if you do have an interaction, how can we help each other, right? Like, how could it doesn't have to be one directional. And I think even some folks make the mistake when they're earlier in their career of thinking like they can't also give, they can only kind of take. And so how can you give to the relationship, even if it's, if you're earlier in your career, like, you could offer to post on social media about the founder or the company, or, send your friends to them for an internship. Like, there's always value to be, give it both, like, give and receive, I would say.
That's incredible. I love that, by the way. And I often say, like, education today is over-indexing on the fact that you need a mentor, not teaching enough about how to be a mentee.
Yeah.
And I love a lot of those tips that were embedded in what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something we saw a lot at Chief because they were executives. It's like, and interestingly, they were often like, I want to be a mentor. I want to give back, but we're all busy and we're all starved for time. And we have so many connection channels and communication channels. And so I think viewing it as like relationship building over time. The other thing I think is a big mistake is not following up. So have a great conversation and then we just kind of drop the ball because life goes on. And so what are your systems, like actually building a system and having a little bit of an infrastructure behind, we've seen everything building Goodword. And with Goodword, you will actually be able to take those notes sort of brain dump into the product and have it resurface those opportunities at the right time.
I love that. Well, as we close out, I'm curious for you, just like, what are you most excited about for this year?
I think this is going to be an incredible year. I mean, our journey, 2024 was like an idea and a dream. 2025 was growing our team, fundraising, launching the product in market, like really getting it into the world. And 2026 feels like it's full of opportunity. And that's exactly like what we're trying to create. We're trying to bring professionals together to unlock opportunities that they maybe wouldn't have if they hadn't met or hadn't reconnected. And so I think it's going to be a really great year. I'm excited to see what it brings.
We're so excited for you. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today in the room.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a great room.
Thank you so much for joining us at The Room Podcast. If you want more from The Room every week, subscribe to our newsletter at theroompodcast.com/newsletter. We'll be back next week with a new episode, an inspirational guest, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. See you in the room.